All right, it looks like we're starting to level off for now. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started so that we can hopefully get this in before we have any weather issues. So for those that don't know me, my name is Amy Thompson. I'm the College and Career Counselor at Hillsborough High School, and welcome to our first virtual college admissions panel. With me this evening so far, I've got 5 of our esteemed colleagues from the other side of the desk. I have Donna Mayer from Drexel University, Samantha Rose Sinclair from Georgia Tech, Chris Hoffman from Hofstra, Christy Matarazzo from NYU, and Alyssa Filanino from Rutgers University. I'm going to ask them to each just take a couple of minutes to introduce their institutions to us. And with no further ado, Donna, go ahead.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate that. I do have the timer running because I am known to be a talker. So it's a Philly thing. It really is. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Donna Mayer. I'm the Senior Assistant Director of Admissions at Drexel University. I just want to throw out there, please make sure that you're using your counselors as a resource and reach out to any of us if you have any questions. Our goal as admissions reps is to help you get to the school where you're going to be happiest. So with that in mind, a little bit about Drexel University. If you're not familiar with us, we are located in the city of Philadelphia. We are not in the heart of downtown Center City, though. We're in our own nice little neighborhood away from the hustle and bustle of the skyscrapers. So at Drexel University, we have about 14,500 undergraduates, but our student faculty ratio is about 11 to 1. So small classroom setting with university resources. We offer the chance for you to really be involved in community. We have over 300 student organizations that you can be a part of. As far as our curriculum, we have 80 majors and about 120 minors, which is great because you can major in maybe biomedical engineering, but minor in communications or psychology. You really can explore different curricula based on what's interesting to you as a person, as a student, or maybe something that's going to enhance your career goals. Going back to the 300 student organizations, we have athletics for students. We're Division I. We also have club teams, intramural programs. We have performing arts opportunities for you, whether as a minor or one of our performing arts ensembles, many of which offer scholarship as well. We also have the chance for all students to be a part of study abroad, research, and of course, co-op, which is the chance for Drexel students to participate in cooperative education where you literally leave the classroom, leave the campus, and you can go work professionally in a capacity, and you can really figure out what it's like to be a working professional in an industry that you yourself are very much interested in. So happy to talk about that with me more in depth at a later point in time. I'm happy to hand the reins over to, would it be Samantha Rose then next?
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. First, I'll ask for your forgiveness if I sound a little, it's allergy season is in Atlanta, isn't it? So hopefully you can all hear me and feel free to ask if I need to repeat anything. But yep, my name is Sammy Rose Sinclair. I am the Assistant Director of Admission and Digital Media for Georgia Tech, and really happy to be with you all here today. So Georgia Tech is a mid-sized, which we all say is a little different. So mid-sized meaning 17,000 or so, public institution in the heart of Atlanta. And so it is in many ways an urban campus in that you're very much surrounded by the city, but you're also surrounded by the city and have your own space. So if I kind of tilt, let's see, I'm mirrored. So if I tilt this way, you can see that you have your own green space, your traditional college campus, about 400 contiguous acres in the heart of Atlanta. And I think to understand a little bit about us, you need to understand where we came from and who we are. So I know no one was anticipating a history lesson this evening. So give me, just humor me for just a second, but founded in 1886, right? Founded, so that puts us right in that area of the Reconstruction, coming into an industrialized, progressive age. So Georgia Tech was really created to bring the South into that new era, right? And so our motto, progress and service, is built on creating change and moving the world forward. And what we do is this idea of taking what we're learning, right, in the classroom and immediately being able to apply it in order to create change with real human impact. All right, so in terms of majors, we have 36, which I know is a little bit on the smaller end for a school of our size, but that's very much intentional. So a STEM school really focused on research, innovation, technology, with majors in, let's see if I could do all of them at once here: design, art, liberal arts, business, computing, engineering, and sciences. There we go, all as Bachelor of Sciences. And then to complement that, you're going to be able to immediately apply what you're learning. So with the largest voluntary co-op program in the country, as well as internship programs with accelerators like CreateX, which since 2014 has helped launch 300 startups collectively valued at $1.4 billion. With about 40% of our students doing research with study abroad programs, which I get to lead one next week. So if you guys want to talk about that, I'm really excited about that. And, all sorts of opportunities, again, to take what you're learning and go out and create knowledge or really try your own hand at it for yourself. So that's a little bit about who we are, why we're doing what we're doing, and what we do. And now let me make sure I do this pass off correctly. I am going to pass it off to Christopher Hoffman from Hofstra.
Thanks, Amy. Hey everyone, my name is Chris Hoffman. I am the Senior Assistant Dean of Admission at Hofstra University, and I'm going to apologize in advance if my internet gets a little bit choppy tonight. I'm actually 10 minutes down the road from you, and my internet got a little bit wonky with the storms today. So I'm mobile hotspotting it for the evening and hoping for the best. But that being said, I did grow up in Flemington. I went to Huntington Central, quite literally down the road from y'all. And I've been at Hofstra for the last, let's see, going on my 10th year now. And so Hofstra is, again, everyone defines medium-sized school a little bit differently, but we're on the small end of the middle-sized institutions. So we have about 6,500 undergrad students, about 10,000 overall when you count our grad population as well. And we are located out on Long Island, just on the other side of New York City. One of the great things about our location is we are less than 5 minutes from Queens. And so growing up in this area, getting stuck behind a tractor on your way to school, as I have many times, and I'm sure that's not a unique experience for me. I really thought I wanted to be in the middle of, the downtown, in the middle of the city. Started touring some city schools and realized that was going to be too big of a jump in lifestyle for me. And so I came to Hofstra and found that access to New York City, communications and business hub for so many things, but really having that small town defined campus feel was really special. And it's something that our students take advantage of as well. We have 165 majors and minors, as well as a number of direct entry programs for the students that know exactly what they want to do. But for the student that doesn't know exactly what they want to do, it's good to know that we are a liberal arts institution where no matter what you are studying, you will have a very well-rounded education. And it's also good to know that our #1 major for first-year students is actually undecided. So take that pressure off yourself. Don't worry about having to pin down right now exactly what you want to do with the rest of your life. You have time to discover your passion and then pursue it full speed ahead. Our big three that we've been known for when I used to recruit nationally down in places like Texas and Georgia, the things that people were seeking us out for were our School of Business, our School of Communication, and our health science programs. But our engineering program has recently made a run at that big three and has been trying to be a part of that conversation, which has been exciting. So we're about 2 hours away, depending on traffic. We'd love to see you on campus. So let me know how I can help make that happen. And with that being said, perfect timing. I'm going to hand it over to Jade, who I know is just joining us here. Jade, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Lafayette.
Of course. Can you folks hear me? Okay, wonderful. So hi, folks. My name is Jade. I'm from Lafayette College. That's just about maybe like an hour-ish away from Hillsborough High School. Lafayette is a small private liberal arts school. It's just over 2,700 students. We have 4 areas of study. However, like most liberal arts schools, you can come in undecided. You don't declare your major until the end of your sophomore year, so you have plenty of time to decide. The one thing that is unique about Lafayette is that we do have a very strong engineering division. And so students who come to Lafayette looking for engineering, but also wanting in a liberal arts context, we have that. About a quarter of our students are engineers. And the other unique thing is that students who study engineering at Lafayette are also encouraged to study abroad. And so if you wanted to go to Bonn, Germany or Madrid, Spain, you have the availability and still graduate in 4 years with ABET accreditation. However, for folks who are not interested in engineering, we are a traditional liberal arts school. And so we have the other 4 areas of study beyond engineering. Students can do research as early as their first year. That includes the humanists, the social sciences, and the natural science students. And so it's available for all of our students because we are strictly undergraduate. We have an average class size of around 18 to 22 with student faculty ratio of 10 to 1. About a third of our students are Division I athletes because we are Division I and 23 varsity teams. We also have a big school spirit with the Lafayette Lehigh rivalry that we have. We also have about 23% of our students who identify as students of color. About 11% of our students identify as international, and about 14% of our students identify as first generation. I think I covered most of like the general stats, but if you're curious about Lafayette, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christy Matarasso, and I'm one of the admissions counselors at NYU, and I'm very happy to join you here this evening. NYU is actually the largest private institution in the country. We have about 25,000 undergraduate students and about the same number of graduate students as well. Many of you know, of course, that we have our campus in New York City in Greenwich Village. We also have our engineering school campus just a few minutes away in Brooklyn in the Metro Tech Center. But some of you may not be aware that we have a number of global campuses as well. In addition to New York, we have degree granting campuses in Abu Dhabi, in the United Arab Emirates, and also in Shanghai, China. And we have students from all over the world at all of our campuses. At our campus in New York, we have students from all 50 states and about 120 countries. At our campus in Abu Dhabi, we also have students from all 50 states in about 100 countries. And then in Shanghai, in addition to the United States, we have students from about 60 other countries, and about half of the population are from all of the provinces in China. So students are choosing our campuses all over the world. A lot of times I find that students are really choosing NYU specifically because of the global experience that they can have. In addition to our 3 degree granting campuses, we have a number of what we call global academic centers, study away sites. And according to the Institute of International Education, we actually send more students abroad than any other institution in the country. Our campus in New York is broken down into 10 different undergraduate colleges. So frequently I'll hear students say, oh, I'm going to apply to just general NYU or things like that. And there's really no such thing. When you apply to NYU in New York, you're choosing one of our specific undergraduate colleges. Generally speaking, you're choosing the undergraduate school that has the major or program of study in which you are interested. And so you're really applying directly to that school when you are thinking of NYU. And we have about 230 different majors overall, everything from undecided to also liberal arts, engineering, different STEM programs, business, nursing, theater programs, arts programs, you name it. We also have a school at NYU where you can create your own program of study. So there's definitely a lot of things that you can take advantage of. There's a lot of ways to pursue your different academic interests. And then, of course, we want students to be involved in the life of the campus as well. And to that end, we have about 300 different organizations in which our students can take part, in addition to, of course, just enjoying New York City or the city in which they're located if they're studying away. And I also just like to point out that we do guarantee housing for all 4 years. That's usually a pretty significant concern when families are thinking about being in an urban environment. So that gives you just a quick general overview. And at this point, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Alyssa from Rutgers.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Alyssa Filanino, and I am from Rutgers University, specifically our main campus located in New Brunswick. So you may already know this, but we are a very large school. We are a large public research institution, and we are also the State University of New Jersey. So we're the 8th oldest institution in the United States. We are the birthplace of college football in the United States, and we are among the most ethnically diverse campuses in the nation and in the Big Ten Alliance. So I'm from New Jersey. I graduated from Rutgers in 2015, and I'm sure maybe you can relate. Also being from New Jersey, there are sometimes certain things you hear about Rutgers, and there may be some stigmas that are associated with Rutgers because we're so close to it. But I can tell you from my personal experience is that the thing about going to a large school like Rutgers University is that there are just a large amount of opportunities for students in the classroom. We have over 100 different undergraduate majors.
And outside of the classroom, you can get involved in over 750 different student clubs and organizations. We are also an accredited major research institution. You're able to get involved in these things, including campus research, right from your first semester in your first year, if that's what interests you. So Rutgers, New Brunswick is also perfectly situated in central New Jersey. We have a train station right on our campus. We are about 45 minutes outside of New York City, about 90 minutes outside of Philadelphia. So not only with this train station can students get to our campus very easily, but you can also get to a lot of the places surrounding New Jersey as well very easily. We have students coming to us from all 50 states and over 110 different countries to study with us on our campus in New Brunswick. So when you're not busy inside of the classroom, like I said, we have over 750 different student clubs and activities to get involved in that range from groups that are centered around community service, cultural identity, academic related groups, performing arts, gaming, being outdoors, you name it, we probably have it. We are also a Division I NCAA school, and we have 24 NCAA Division I sports. But we also have sports at the club and intramural level as well, from soccer, track, rowing. We even have a Quidditch team. If you've ever seen Harry Potter, we have a Quidditch team for New Brunswick as well. But this really just highlights how many options we have for our students to get involved in inside the classroom and then also outside the classroom as well. So that is where I will end. I can also answer any questions later, but I believe I was the last one to go, so we can get started with the main event.
We can. So hopefully, for those of you who are earlier on in your college search process, that starts to give you an idea about the wide variety of institutions that are out there, how some things maybe are like, how some things are different, and maybe starts to give you an idea about some of the things that you might want to be thinking about that you weren't thinking about before you got on this session tonight. So from the schools that we have here, just so we know, these are all schools that are fairly popular for our students. This year, we sent a total of 483 applications to these 6 schools. So our first question, a whole bunch of the questions that I have ready tonight, the whole first grouping is really about different parts of the application itself, and want to hear from our different colleges. So, we hear a lot as high school students and parents, there's a lot said about, GPA test scores, or the essay will get you in. Can you talk to me about what are some of the things that your institution prioritizes when you review applications? Are some things more important than others? We hear about this word holistic. What does that mean? What does that mean to your school? I'm not sure. Who wants to give it a start on that one? I'm going to go with Sammy. I'll pick on you.
Sure. So I think if I was to sum it up in like an easy sentence, right? The goal of our admission process is to understand who the student would be on our campus. And so there's a lot of different aspects of the application that they're going to submit that can really tell us a little bit about that. And so inside the classroom, of course, the transcript, not just the GPA, but actually understanding the courses that the student chose to took and how they performed over 3 years and into their senior schedule, right? That's going to tell us a lot about, their academic interests once they get here. And then outside the classroom, how were they spending their time when their time is their own, right? How have they grown? Where have they been a leader? Not necessarily in role, but in how they've made an impact. So a lot of times spent on looking at what we call contribution to community, but I think more universally is called extracurriculars. And then we don't hold interviews. And so our best place to hear a student's voice is in their essays, and especially in their supplemental essays, because that's going to tell us a little bit about Georgia Tech specifically. So we've got, other things, including recommendations, test scores, but really getting a sense of the student's voice, what they're doing outside the classroom and inside the classroom is going to really probably be some of the more important things that we're going to focus in on there.
Yeah, jumping in, off of that, there's a reason why we receive the whole transcript and not just the GPA that gets spit out at the bottom of the transcript. So to answer the first part of the question, yes, we absolutely do review applications fully, meaning that we want to look at every piece together. But we also, this is why we have people reviewing applications instead of algorithms or artificial intelligence or something, because we are human beings and we understand that learning remotely during COVID years looked a lot different than learning in the classroom. And a student who challenges themselves with various honors and AP courses might exhibit different grading patterns than a student who takes all standard level courses. And so we review everything together rather than just a GPA and a test score, or just the list of extracurriculars. We can look at everything and kind of get the feel for not just will this student do well at our university, but will the student also contribute positively to the university when they get here, get involved with their clubs instead of just staying in their dorm room and studying the entire time. And so that is why we do take that more human approach to everything. And similar to Georgia Tech, we don't typically offer interviews. So the essay really is the chance to tell us a story. I'm sure that we're going to get into that a little bit later, but the opportunity to let yourself shine as an individual beyond just GPA and test scores and grades.
Right. If no one has a burning desire to jump in there, I'm going to move on to what you probably hear a ton about. And I know probably every single family has a question about, which is test optional. Can you tell us, that's one of the biggest concerns out there. Can you tell us about, talk to us about test optional at your institution? Is it a thing? Is it a thing for which class years? Where do we stand? Also, if your school is test optional, can you tell us how can students know if they should or shouldn't submit test scores? That's one of the big concerns we tend to hear.
So I can start this one off if nobody minds.
Go for it.
So test optional. For Rutgers specifically, we have historically always required the SAT. But I think that, since COVID, and this was coming anyway, a lot of institutions, Rutgers included, kind of moved to a test optional model, and now maybe are toying with the idea of keeping that. So test optional, we declared that we will go that route until the fall of 2024. And when students are asking, if they should send it, how do they know they should send it? What we always say is, if you select on your application, there is a question on the Rutgers application. Are you planning to, or are you going to send us your test scores for review during the application review? If you select yes, we will not review your application until we get your test scores, because it will remain as a missing piece on your checklist. If you select no, then we will just go ahead and take what we have from you and review your application. If you do submit test scores, we will consider them during the review process. So after looking at, Rutgers puts out an admissions profile, which kind of gives you a middle 50 percentile range of students that were accepted last year. It gives you your SAT scores and the GPAs and things like that. What I always tell students is, after looking at this admissions profile, if you fall within this middle 50 percentile range in terms of your test scores, then I would send them. If maybe you did sit for the SAT and you didn't get the score that you hoped, if you don't think that your SAT score reflects well on you as a student in your academic performance, then I would not send it. Because if you do send it, we're going to have to factor that into your review. So it could potentially wind up hurting you, since it will be a piece of that pie that we are going to be reviewing, if that makes any sense. I don't know if somebody wants to take over and maybe
The one
Like-
thing, the few points that I would like to add is I definitely agree. If you fall amongst the testing range of our school's profile, sure, submit it if you'd like to. If you don't, then I would discourage you, particularly if you fall below, because as Alyssa mentioned, like we do have to look at it if you say you're going to submit test scores, and we will factor that into your application. The other thing to consider is that most schools are test optional. There are some schools that will require test scores now that we're kind of coming out of the pandemic, and there's also schools that are test blind. So the difference between test optional is you have the option to submit your test scores. Test blind means that the school does not require test scores and don't look at test scores. And then the other thing I want to mention about test scores is that some schools may say that they're test optional, but they require test scores for merit scholarships or for other academic consideration. So you always want to double check with the institution. A simple call or email to the school and saying, hey, do you require test scores for merit or other academic scholarships? And they're going to tell you yes or no. And that might be able to give you an indication of whether you should take the SAT or ACT again, or if you are comfortable with the scores that you have. But you want to keep those in the back of your mind. So those are just my 2 points about test scores.
I think I might be representing the only institution that's currently test required. All right, no pressure. So I think one thing to know about Georgia Tech and any other schools you might be interested in the state of Georgia that are public is that we are all required to require test scores as a member of the as members of the university system of Georgia. So sometimes as you're not only looking at schools, but systems, right, statewide, if you're looking at to go out of state, that's an important and helpful thing to look at too. When you're thinking about then, when you kind of zoom in and look at Georgia Tech specifically, you might have noticed in that last question that I really didn't highlight tests as one of the more important things that we're looking at, because again, it's really going to give us a snapshot of that test that you took that day, but we are going to be able to see a much larger picture of 3 years of work of who you've been inside and outside the classroom and the impact that you had. And that's going to tell us a lot more again about who you're going to be on campus. And so we generally encourage students to just test once. We'll complete that requirement. If you test multiple times, we'll super score, but it's not going to be the thing that moves the needle in our process. It's not a deciding factor. And I think to highlight and underscore and bold and italicize even further, Georgia Tech students tend to perform applicants within a very narrow band of the SAT and ACT. And so while I often get asked what the middle 50% of our admitted or enrolling students are, I rarely get asked what the middle 50% of our applicants are. And they're the same. So I think sometimes students think that middle 50% is causational when really it's a little bit correlational sometimes. And that if you're below that or above that, that's not going to be the or a deciding factor in your process, but submitting one will complete that requirement so we can review your application.
I see that we're popping in a lot of questions about test scores. So my next question is a little more scenario based and kind of will probably sum up like the 5 different questions that are popping up from people right now. And I think there's, some of our other test required schools can kind of weigh in a little similar to how Sammy just did. So I guess if you submit them, how meaningful are they in the process? What if a student has an average GPA and exceptional test scores, or an exceptional GPA and average scores? Like, how much are they going to help or hurt? What if 2 students otherwise look the same and one has scores and one doesn't? Like, how do you, now that we're like 2 years into this whole thing where more schools are test optional, like how do you review all of that?
I think context has a significant amount to do with the decisions that we make based on these different scenarios. So at Drexel, for example, we don't have caps. So I don't really need to compare one student versus another student for admission. Any students that we have questions about, we do have committees for the specific colleges, and we have those, those teams kind of give us, their opinion on, how they feel a student might do, and they give us some guidance, but it really is the admissions office making these decisions. So context is really very relevant for that. So if you're that student, for example, who had a concussion and you were a strong student, but you had some lower grades in some classes for a little bit of time or a year, we can take that into context and really look at the fuller picture that you're offering us through that whole application. That's what that holistic review, it's really so significant that it allows us to really see all the information that you're sharing and make the best decision based on all of the information. So we can see overall how you were as a student academically, overall, what were you involved in? What were your time management skills? Overall, what is the impression that your counselor may have of you, or the teacher that you reached out to? And then the essay, of course. So all of that information is what goes into our decision making. Now, there could be some, and I would say, I mean, for schools that do the holistic review, it's very, very individualized. We review each application. We really read everything that you send to us. So I would say reach out to your counselors to give them some guidance, let them give you some guidance about sending scores or not sending scores. Because if you're that student, for example, who maybe your grades are okay, kind of drifted along, and then your testing is phenomenal, we might say, well, did that student, were they a little lazy? Weren't they really, really doing the work that they needed to do day in and day out over their entire time as a high school student? We can see they're intelligent. They were okay, throughout the years, but then their testing was off the charts. So that might be a student we have a discussion about. And then, conversely, if a student was super strong all throughout their time in high school, and then their testing maybe didn't meet what their transcript showed us, it wasn't on par, then we might have the conversation about that student as well. But again, all of that other information can be really important to us. So the counselor might reiterate the fact that the student just was not having especially during this pandemic, again, taking that into context. Maybe the student was having some significant trouble around the time they were taking that SAT or the ACT. So that's the context that we will look at when we're making our decisions. So again, I mean, I know for us at Drexel, it's not really student versus student that we're reviewing. It's every application on an individualized setting.
I would agree with Donna. The other thing I would mention, though, and I feel like it can be hard, right? Students are probably still like, I don't know, do I send it? Do I not send it? I think it is important, though, at least for NYU, I can't speak for other institutions. We are test optional currently. I don't know if we will permanently keep that, but for students who are high school juniors right now, for your application cycle, we will still be test optional. But sometimes students will say to me, well, my scores weren't that great, but should I send them anyway? Because it shows you that I've gone above and beyond. Like, I'm sending you something that you don't need. I'm kind of doing something extra. And my response to that is always, if you send it, we will consider it. And that might not work in your favor. I can't tell you how many times I read applications where I'm like, oh man, I wish the student hadn't sent their testing, because now I have it and I have to use it, but I wish I didn't. And so I think there's been a lot of good advice given already about kind of looking at middle 50% and things like that of, where test scores fall to help give you a good idea. A lot of high schools also do keep some data on students who were admitted. So your school counselor can perhaps give you a sense of, well, NYU hasn't admitted anyone with that test score in the past, 3 years or something. So maybe let's not send that. Or, yep, that score actually is right in line with a lot of students who have been admitted recently. So yeah, I think that would be a good one to send. So that kind of information can be helpful as well. But at least for us, we found, so we've only been test optional for 2 years. The pandemic forced it upon us like it did at many schools. We found that about half of our applicants applied with testing and about half without. It was really very similar, very cool, about 55% with testing. So almost right down the middle. And we were admitting students at right around kind of those same proportions. But do, just take a look at your testing and see, the data that you have and the information that you have, but don't think to yourself, well, my score is really not great, but I'm going to send it just because it's like an added extra and they'll see that I'm going above and beyond, because if it's really not such a great score, it actually could end up hurting you.
All right, I'll let us move on from testing because I know No, we get a lot of these questions. And just to put everybody's mind at ease, for every single school you see here up on the screen here this year, we had students who were admitted without test scores, with the exception of Georgia Tech this year. Sorry, Sammy. They had no choice there, but for everywhere else, our students were admitted. Some students were admitted with scores, some students were admitted without scores. Some students were not admitted with scores, and some students were not admitted without scores. So we do have kind of the full array, and that includes both the, from early decision, early action, and regular decision at all of these places. We've kind of got the full array of how students have gotten in. So moving on from test scores, let's talk about the transcript. So many of you have been reading Hillsborough applicants, for a while, or are fairly familiar with what we have. So our students, our transcripts are on a 100-point scale. So every grade, and this is especially for our, our families with younger students who may not be so familiar with our transcripts. Transcripts got 4 boxes: 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. It lists the name of the course, the level that it's taken at. It lists the student's raw grade in the class, so the actual grade they obtained in the class. There's no weighting there. And then at the bottom, and for each year, we calculate a weighted GPA and an unweighted GPA, also on that 100-point scale. We don't have a 4.0 scale at Hillsborough. So I'm wondering, schools, do you use the GPAs that we provide? Do you recalculate them somehow? Does your school even use GPA as a data point? What about that number, the GPA?
I can get started. So we are a school that does recalculate your GPA. So while the GPA on the transcript is helpful in understanding where the student is amongst the high school and determining how they are performing in that area, we do recalculate the GPA. And what that means is that we take out your 5 core academic solid classes. So it's English, math, science, social studies, and foreign languages. We don't really particularly care how well you did in gym. We hope you're taking care of yourself in health, but mainly the 5 academic solids is what we care about. So we recalculate it based on the weight that the high school gives for each honors and AP classes. So we give that back to you because we know that you're taking a lot of rigor. And that's how we evaluate the GPA in terms of the transcript. The other question, now that I'm trying to remember, is that not all schools will recalculate the GPA. So that's also something to keep in mind. Typically, most schools will evaluate the student based on the institution that they're attending. So we're going to evaluate based on how many APs, courses that you have the ability to take. We understand that there might be some scheduling issues. We look at how many honors classes that you're able to take, and that's kind of how we determine the academic strength of the student.
We are a school that will not recalculate the Hillsborough GPA. And the reason for that is that Hillsborough is not a school, at least in our experience, that participates in grade inflation. So we will only really recalculate GPAs from schools where you can tell that there is some grade inflation. The GPA or the grades that you see, are not necessarily indicative of student success. But for Hillsborough students, it's good to know that the GPA that we will use as part of the review process, along with everything else, will be the GPA that you see on your transcript. We look at weighted and unweighted. If there's a huge discrepancy between a weighted and unweighted GPA, then we will dig a little bit deeper, but otherwise we will typically use a weighted GPA in the review process.
The other thing, oh, go ahead, Sam.
I was going to say just what he said. So we do very similar. It's based on weighted 100-point scale, and then we stick without recalculating and use what's called a school profile to understand some context about curriculum, how that weighting and how that calculation came together. And that's another document with your transcript that's going to come from your school.
The other thing I was going to mention is that we do look at the courses that you take in high school, and what we hope to see is that the strength of your rigor is increasing every year. So let's say you start out with maybe some college prep courses or maybe some honors courses. And then you increase that rigor every year to maybe some AP courses and maybe some honors courses mixed in, depending on the student. We're not expecting all students to take all the APs and all the honors in your high school. That is impossible. We want to see the strength compared to what you can handle. And every student is different. But we also, a majority of schools will want to see your senior year grades. So either it's the first semester or the first depending on some students, it might be the first marking period if they apply early decision. But we want to see that you're still doing well in your senior year. So we don't want you to slack off. We don't want you to get senioritis. We are still looking at that. And most schools will take those grades into consideration when evaluating the student's application. I mean, certainly I do at Lafayette. If a student doesn't do so well in their senior year, I might have to take that student to committee and we might have to talk about why they're not performing so well. But this is also in the context of the rest of your transcript. So if it is in line, that's a different conversation versus if a student is a really strong applicant, but maybe their senior year grades is a little bit softer. So this is just kind of letting you folks know that we do care about what you're doing in senior year. We don't want you to slack off. We still want you to be academically curious about the classes that you're taking and still challenging yourself, because that's what you're going to see in college. You're going to be able to take a lot of different courses that might interest you, and we want to see the academic curiosity still thrive in you. And so by taking the course that you hopefully are interested in taking in senior year, you will be able to also perform well.
A little bit more kind of thoughts about grades. I often hear from families, which is better? Do I stay in CP courses and get all A's? Do I take advanced courses at any cost? Is it better to have, getting those AP courses even if I'm getting C's or D's in them? Or, where should I be? Do I need to be taking all of the things outside of school just to get all of the possible things on my transcript? Do I need to be dropping bands so that I can take one more AP? Like, what should I be doing?
I always recommend that students challenge themselves where it's appropriate. Oftentimes students do have certain academic strengths. Maybe you are more into social sciences, maybe you're really good at your STEM courses, maybe you like the humanities. You can use your own judgment based on how well you've done in certain classes in the past, as well as the recommendations of your teachers to know if you're ready for an AP course. If you've taken some like honors level English courses and done really well in them, then yeah, maybe it's time for your AP English classes in maybe junior and senior year. If you're taking just kind of your standard level math and it's been really hard for you to keep up an A or B average, then, it's probably not a great idea to move on to the AP in that case. So we definitely want to see you challenge yourself, because it's actually also just great preparation for college and what the workload is going to be and what the discussions are going to be like. It's very, very different from the high school setting. So it's just also great practice. And we want you to do well in those classes, though. It doesn't do anyone any good to challenge yourself with every AP class under the sun and then get like C's in all of them. So really think about what your academic strengths are and, use that to think about where you can maybe pursue a little bit more of a challenge in some of those advanced courses.
One more thing to pop in, like if I'm an AB college prep student, like can I go to college, or like can I not go to college if I don't take AP courses?
Yes, you can go to college. Yes, you can. And just kind of jumping on what Krista was talking about as far as the courses that you're taking too. I mean, it might be, and this is maybe more for the parents too, it might be really informational for you to see that if you want your student to go to med school or a certain industry, but you're seeing they're not doing well in the classes they're going to need to do well in that program or that major or that industry, maybe it's time for a little reality check to really make sure that your student is really going for the programs where they're going to be successful and happy as a person. So you might have goals and dreams for them and students too, and you might need to just kind of tweak how you're approaching that then. So if you both want the student to go to med school, but they're not doing well in the sciences or the math that they need to do well in undergrad and to get into med school, then maybe there might be some changes made. Maybe the student should have a tutor. Maybe the student does need to maybe not play soccer and focus more on their academics. Or maybe it's not really the best path for them. Or maybe there's another path to that industry. So like at Drexel, we have a number of engineering programs, but we also have engineering technology for students that do love engineering, but maybe are not as strong in the maths and sciences as students in our more traditional engineering program. So it's still engineering, but it's not as math focused. It's more theory and more, actually more lab focused, so more hands-on learning. So there are different ways to approach a goal and a dream that you might have.
That was really good, Donna. That was very important.
I'll actually let that segue us to, what role does major play in the admission process and scholarship if it impacts there? Like, what if I'm undecided? Can I apply to your school that way? Is it better to just like randomly pick something? Or like some schools I know, like you can apply as an undecided. Sometimes it's like business undecided. Like, what should I do? Do I have to have classes in high school that are related to my major? Like if I want to apply to comp sci major, like, do I need to have is it hurt me if I don't have comp sci courses on my transcript in high school? What if they just don't fit because of we do have kind of a restrictive schedule. We have a 7-period day, so it is a little more restrictive than some of our neighbors. So how does all that kind of play in?
So for Rutgers, and I think that this might be the case at some other schools, so typically universities they will admit you into a major or they'll admit you into a program. At Rutgers, you apply into a general academic college within Rutgers University. So we have 7 first-year academic colleges. So the School of Arts and Sciences, the School of Engineering, the Business School, and some others. If you are admitted into that school, all students will actually come in undecided. So on your application, say while you are applying into the School of Engineering, we ask you for your major of interest on the application, but all students who are accepted come into that academic college undeclared during their first year. So whether you know exactly what you want to major in or you're not really sure, it doesn't really matter because everybody is coming in undeclared into that academic college. And then once you start at Rutgers, you spend your first semester, your first year, first 2 years taking courses towards the core curriculum and taking any of those prerequisite courses that you will need to complete in order to declare the major that you are anticipating to take on. So this is a really good way for students to get to Rutgers, kind of get settled, start taking courses at the university level before they have to actually declare anything. So the short answer, it does not really matter if you're undecided or not, because all students come in undecided. All you have to really do and make a choice on is which academic college you are going to be applying into. So we do not admit students into specific majors. Unless, of course, you're applying into the School of Nursing, then your major is nursing, or the School of Pharmacy, then surprise, your major is pharmacy.
I do want to add, and I think this might answer one of the questions in the Q&A, is that Lafayette, similar to most schools up here, if you come in undecided, that's not a detriment to the application. You have plenty of time to decide when you want to declare what major you are. And typically most schools are within like a year or 2 years, depending, I don't know every school here. But what I can say is that, for instance, let's say a student is thinking about the engineer or is thinking about the natural science fields. We do expect to see some level of higher level math and science classes. So we want to see some version of calculus, some version of maybe the higher level sciences, so that we can see your knowledge and to see how well you perform in those classes. Now, you could change your mind. I mean, you guys are what, 16, 17 at this point? You could change your mind 20 million times before you actually declare your major at the point it matters. And that is totally fine. We're not marrying you to your major. You're not in an academic silo. You're going to have plenty of time to talk to your academic advisors, talk to your peers, talk to your professors, see what courses you like, see what courses you don't like, and have a more understanding of the major to make a more educated decision of what your major is going to be. So you do have the support, the advisors, and the time to make those decisions. But if you're someone who knows exactly what you want to major in college, then you can certainly start taking those major classes. But for someone who is undecided, but you have a general sense of what they're interested in, if you're someone who's interested in English, maybe taking AP English and maybe some higher level English courses will help you in understanding the academic field a little bit better. So my suggestion to you is that if you have an inkling of areas of study that you want to focus in, take those higher level classes so that you can widen your understanding and breadth of that academic field. Because then college is your time to really solidify, like, okay, I'm thinking humanities, I don't know about English, but possibly foreign languages. So let me kind of take some more foreign language classes. That way you're able to kind of start funneling down what you're specifically interested in, and also being able to take other classes that you might be interested in as well.
All right, I think we've beaten the academic horse. So let's move on to the other side of the house a little bit. What about extracurricular activities? Are there some things that are considered, difference makers or most impressive? What if a school doesn't offer something? Like if a school doesn't offer FBLA or DECA or National Honor Society, what if they don't have something? Does that hurt them? Are there things that you must have? What are you really looking for in those extracurriculars, and what counts as an extracurricular anyway?
I think this is one of those areas where a lot of people are looking to either like hack or like optimize like the college application process and like find the ideal balance, right? Everyone's like, oh, well, if I have like this number of APs and I, a B in an honors course versus, an A in a CP level course, and I have this extracurricular, then I'll definitely get in here. And like, the big thing that you have to keep in mind is that all of the panelists, everyone that you see in front of you here, we're trying to help you find the best fit for you. And so, yes, of course, you want to put your best foot forward on that application. You want to let yourself shine as much as you possibly can, but don't worry about trying to hack the college application to end up in a certain outcome or a certain spot, because you will end up wherever the best fit is for you. So when it comes to the application and the extracurricular list, showcase the things that you really are passionate about. I think, at Hofstra, we have a lot of flexibility in that we're not looking for, a certain number of extracurriculars or a certain level of involvement or anything, but we really want to see what you are passionate about. And so some of the most successful applicants that I have seen have actually been students that have done just 2 extracurriculars, but then they also either work, 20 hours a week, 25 hours a week, because they're helping support their family, or they are helping take care of a sick grandparent or something. As long as you tell me about what it is that you do with your free time outside of the classroom, that's really where it matters. I want to see, again, it comes down to, we don't want to enroll students at our university who are just going to go to class, come home, study, go to sleep, and not get involved, in the campus community beyond that. We want students that are going to contribute to the university environment around them. And so that's what we want to see, whether it's jazz band or the football team or, some academic club or anything like that, or a job. Just tell us what it is that you do with your time and what you're passionate about. It gives us a sense of what that next step will look like for you on our campus.
I think earlier you all heard me use quickly a term, contribution to community, which I know is something specific to Georgia Tech, but we've shied away from saying extracurriculars for exactly what Chris just said, and it's that it's not just extracurricular, right? So not just the things that are attached to the school, especially because I think for probably most folks listening, how you've been spending your time over the past few years has probably looked really different. The communities you've been a part of, the spaces you've been in, that's changed. And so if we take a step back from just thinking about curricular, like what am I doing that's attached to the school, and expand it quite a bit to just like was said, what am I doing when my time is my own, and how am I creating impact and contributing to all of the communities that I'm a part of? Then I hope you're starting to also thinking about areas of service, private organizations, jobs, so on and so forth, that aren't just captured in your traditional clubs and organizations. So something that we say that at first, well, is going to sound kind of odd, is like, so when you go on to college, who's going to miss you, right? Like those places where you have impact, that they're relying on you, that you're creating change, right? And they're like, man, I wish that Sally and, Donna and Christopher, Jane and Chrissy, whoever, were still here, right? Where are those places? Tell us about those, because then we get to get excited about you bringing that to our campus.
I think what's important when you're talking about your activities, particularly on the Common Application, is your level of excitement for them. It's not about filling out all the boxes and checking off all the little ticks that we have, but rather putting some genuine effort into whether it is a service organization or a culture organization or something, or part-time job, family responsibilities, whatever it may be. We can tell when a student is genuinely passionate, interested, excited about the things that they're doing versus things that they're just putting on their application because they think it's going to help them to get into college. The Common Application is a way for us to get to know you. You shouldn't be trying to force yourself into the little boxes that we have, which most of us don't have boxes, but rather we want to learn about you. We want to know what makes you tick, what gets you excited, what gets you passionate about things. Why are you still doing field hockey if that's something that you want to do? Why are you still participating in the mock trial or speech and debate? Like, we want to know the whys instead of the whats. Like, we know what you're involved in because of the Common Application, but the whys of like, why are you taking on a part-time job versus another organization that you could be a part of? Or why are you starting your own company or starting your own business? Because that may be something you might be interested in, or doing research. That is the way for us to kind of get to know the student beyond just the academics. So when we talk about a well-rounded application and a well-rounded student, the activities page and the ways that you can describe the activities in various other forms of the application is what we're interested in as well, because it lets us know that you're also human and you have things that excite you and you have things that you want to do, because your time is precious. We know that if you were given the opportunity to write a 20-page paper on something that bores you versus participating in the field hockey game, you probably would choose a field hockey game because that might be something that excites you. That might be something that you're really passionate about. Your time is precious. And so we want to know, how do you devote your time and why?
And I also want to add that I think a lot of people ask, if I want to go into this type of major or field, should I only join a whole bunch of clubs that have to do with that? And I always say definitely not, because just kind of like what you said, Jade, we love to see well-rounded humans who have their true interests and things that excite them. And maybe that is like a whole bunch of things that are contributed to the major. But we definitely like to see students that are well-rounded and just really excited about what they're doing.
I think, though, is there kind of a line though between being well-rounded and sometimes students might look for less popular majors at a certain school and say they want to major in that, but there's no other indication on the application that that is something that a student's passionate about. So how do you kind of like suss out some of that game playing that students might be doing by applying to a wide array of different majors depending upon the school they're applying to in an effort to increase their odds of getting into them?
I think there was were some really great points made before about passion, right? And so the way that you can talk about something that you're excited about versus the way that you can talk about something that's more like what you're saying, right? Where it's like, well, this major seems to sort of be a way in. You're going to have a very different way that you can communicate your interests and your hopes and your goals. And so more often than not, in cases where even if it is, admission by major, doing that sort of thing could really be a detriment to the way that you're talking about who you're going to be on that campus.
The other thing is sometimes the application doesn't align. So the easiest telltale is like, let's say the student's interested in Renaissance and medieval history, but they didn't do so well in their social studies courses. They're not too interested in English, but they're really strong in the math and sciences. That gives us an indication that maybe the student changed their mind and maybe is seriously interested in medieval and Renaissance history, but maybe not. So that's why we embark on a holistic application because we get a bits of information from everything. Your letter's recommendation, your teacher's letter recommendation, your application, your essay, your supplementals, everything gives us a little bit more piece to who you are. And so for a student who's really passionate and really strong in the natural sciences, but somehow is interested in like Arabic studies, that might be a little disconnect. You might be truly interested in Arabic studies, but at the same time, the other components of the application will allow us to better understand who you are. And that might be a new interest of yours. And that might be an opportunity to talk about it. Otherwise, we kind of see the disconnect. And then from there, we're like, interesting. It's a committee conversation.
I love that Jade said that that's an opportunity to talk about it because, yep, absolutely. You never want us to kind of read your application and sort of like wonder what's going on there or like what happened here. Like there is that, in the Common App additional information section. It's a great place to bring that stuff up. As far as NYU is concerned, I mentioned in the beginning, we're a university comprised of 10 different undergraduate colleges and, every school at NYU has different academic areas of study. And I always tell students just in terms of kind of applying to the one that has your major. And, some students I think have it in their mind that some schools are more selective than others. They might be surprised to know that the school they think is the most selective is actually tied with another one of our schools at NYU. But, I always say that kind of applying to a school within an institution like NYU that has that kind of setup, like that's just the start. Then why would you want to apply to something and perhaps get into a program of study that's not really what you want to do? Because guess what? Like if that's what you're admitted to, that's what you've got to do then. Like I talk about this all the time when I'm talking about the 10 schools at NYU, and students will like come out and say to me, well, I definitely don't want to apply to school A because I know it's the hardest to get into. So I'm going to apply to school B instead. And I'm like, all right, but what happens if you get into school B then? Like, there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to move into school A. So like, what? Why? I think sometimes students see getting in as the end. It's just the start. So, definitely think about that as you're applying. I know students are always trying to find ways to like strategize and game the system, and that's certainly never going to end. But try to think beyond just being offered admission and enrolling, and thinking about the program that you genuinely want to study and that you want to take classes in. Because I always say too, if you were admitted to a program that maybe was a little less selective, but are you really going to be happy in it if that's not the thing that you really want to do? Like, what's the point of being offered admission if it's a program that you're kind of meh about anyway? So those are all important things to think about.
I think that's a really great point. Like the ultimate goal here, like the prize is not the acceptance letter. Like the prize is really all the experiences you're going to have over the next 4 years, all the things that you're going to learn, the people that you're going to meet, the experiences you're going to have in and out of the classroom, and eventually the degree and maybe the person you marry and the place you move to, and that's the prize, not the admission letter in your senior year. So you got to kind of think long-term here in the whole process. Changing gears a little bit to something a little bit specialized, and some of you have audition and portfolio-based programs. How does that stuff kind of factor in the admission process? Is that more or less important than kind of like the traditional grades and scores type stuff at your school?
I can start because we have this, all of our programs at NYU that culminate in a Bachelor of Fine Arts or a Bachelor of Music do require an audition or a portfolio. So it's definitely good to research that a little bit if you're applying to those programs, just so you're prepared with what you need to either prepare for your audition or submit for your portfolio. For us, I would say so in the admissions office, we do not review your artistic information just because it's not our expertise. We leave that to the faculty, and then they give us feedback about the students who, have done well artistically versus students who maybe haven't done as well artistically. And then we use that information then as we're reviewing kind of the academic portion of our application. So the artistic is important. I would say for us, there are instances where like a really strong artistic review could maybe help out an academic review that's a little bit more average. But I wouldn't necessarily say that the opposite is true, that stellar academics could really help out a more average artistic. So in that way, I would say that for us, your talent is a little bit more of a driver in that situation, which can be hard because, you know, we were talking earlier about using some data to maybe help you decide to send testing or not, but the artistic, it's just sort of like that X factor that you don't really know, you know, how your talent compares with other students in the applicant pool. You might have a sense of how it compares with students in your high school or even in your region, your state. So that can be a little nerve-wracking, I think, not really knowing kind of where you stand. But for, you know, for us as a school that requires an artistic submission, it is a significant part of the admissions decision.
It's the same at Rutgers as well for our Mason Gross School of the Arts. For the Bachelor of Fine Arts majors that are in that school, it does require either an audition or a portfolio, and it's kind of the same thing where us in the admissions office don't review the talent pieces because what do we know? So the professionals in the school are the ones that are looking at the auditions and looking at the portfolios, and then we will conduct the academic portion and, you know, all the other stuff to make sure that those students who they have deemed, you know, highly talented in that portion are academically admissible to the university. But for them, the talent portion is absolutely very, very important. But we also have a few of those majors in our School of Arts and Sciences as well. So on the Rutgers application, say you're a student that's very interested in dance. On the Rutgers application, you can apply into the Mason Gross School of the Arts, and then you can also apply into the School of Arts and Sciences on your one Rutgers application, and you will be reviewed separately for them. So if, say you do your audition at Mason Gross, you do your dance audition, and maybe you weren't offered admission to the Mason Gross School of the Arts for that Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, you still can get acceptance to the School of Arts and Sciences. And we do have just a Bachelor of Arts major through the School of Arts and Sciences. So with a lot of the majors in the BFA programs in the Mason Gross School of the Arts, we also have similar majors that aren't as intense, and they're just Bachelor of Arts majors through the School of Arts and Sciences. And those majors, since they are less rigorous, less credit intensive, still taught by Mason Gross faculty, but you're through the School of Arts and Sciences, and those ones do not require an audition. So they're for Rutgers, it's, you know, there's a few different options to do your art.
That's a great explanation of kind of the difference between like a BA, BFA, especially for folks that are just starting out. All right, I think I'm going to go on to kind of the essay. You know, what makes an essay memorable? You know, our juniors are pretty much just working on their essays now, so this is really timely advice for them. You know, what makes it memorable? Are there things you don't like to read about, you find they aren't helpful? And, you know, really, what's the purpose? Because I have to say, I feel like the college essay from when I went to school and is different from what the college essay is about now, which is parents, why you can really tell when an 18-year-old is writing it as opposed to a 40-something-year-old mom, because it's not what it was when we went to school.
Yeah, I think that's every year I have to say the same piece about, you know, we can tell when it's not written by the student. And even with a certain amount of editing and help and input from an outside source, you can tell when an outside editor kind of starts to take over a little bit in the writing process. So it really should be, you know, from the student. And again, in what we've kind of been talking about, not trying to gamify or optimize or hack the college admission process. There is no perfect essay topic or essay format even. My favorite story to tell is in the, 4 years now that I've been reviewing essays, the single best Common App essay that I have read has been about sandwiches. A student wrote about how some weird thing started with his friends his freshman year of high school, where he would bring half of his kitchen pantry to the cafeteria for lunch, and he would make weird sandwich combinations and his friends would dare him to eat them. And you know, the first third of the essay, quarter of the essay, you're like, okay, where is this going? But then the student talked about this period of growth that he had working with students at a summer camp, the summer between his sophomore and junior years, where he realized that every student, every person that he interacts with is a different type of sandwich. And some of them are your standard run-of-the-mill ham and cheese, and some of them are going to be pepperoni and honey and fluffer butter, you know? Not everyone's going to be your flavor of sandwich, but you know, he's come to appreciate everyone for the different unique qualities that they bring to the table, and it's helped him realize that he wants to go into psychology and eventually work with youth, you know, as a psychiatrist. The single best essay that I've ever read, so different than anything else, not nearly you know, the cookie cutter essay format that so many people think about with their college essay, but of the thousands and thousands that I've read, it's definitely, that's the top tier. So don't be afraid to take a risk. Don't be afraid to flesh out a couple of different ideas and see which one comes the most naturally to you, that you feel you can tell the best story. But ultimately, it's your essays, not your mom or dad's, you know, not your counselors, not your English teachers. It's your essay. So tell your story.
I think if your juniors are just starting to write, sometimes the sticky part is trying to find that topic, right? That's the hard thing. And I think what you just even heard just there is the prompt. Definitely we're not focusing, at least I'll speak for Georgia Tech, we're not really focusing on. I would even be controversial and say the topic doesn't even really matter that much, because what we matter is what we learned about you. What was the takeaway, right? And so my favorite, maybe we're all just hungry when we're reading applications, because it'll also go into food a little bit, there was this girl, she was in a hotel, right? You guys know those metallic Italian takeout containers that are like circles. Okay, so she had 2 of those, no microwave, the horror. Okay, so she needed to reheat her food, put all of it into one, use the coffee maker from the hotel room, boiled up some water, put it in the other, created a double boiler, use the hair dryer from the room to melt the cheese on top and get the top all warm, somehow used a clothes hanger, right? I don't know. It's been a few years. The point is, right, she didn't climb Mount Everest. She didn't perform heart surgery, but man, did we just learn about the way that student thinks, right? She's totally going to be that student that comes on campus and uses the maker spaces and all that stuff. And so think about if your application is a story, right? And you're telling us about you, perhaps what's missing, what's the takeaway, what, right, do you want your admission counselor to know? And then you can think about something that illustrates that, instead of starting with the topic, which is really, really hard, and trying to squeeze something out of that. That's my cat saying hello. So that's what I got for that.
I hate to be the Debbie Downer, but I'll be the one who says what topics you should kind of rethink. There are 3 main topics that tends to be like the students' go-to, because it relates to most students. So the first one is the injury or not making a sports team, because it's devastating. It's the end of the world. You're not going to live another day, and it's just horrible experience. One thing I would mention in regards to that is one of the most popular topics that we get, because it is one that most students often face, whether it's not making a sports team, not making the shot, you've received an injury, and the world is just about to come to an end. The world is not going to end. You are going to get over, you are going to gain resilience. But if that is a topic that you want to write about, think of a way to write about it that is not the #1 way of writing about it. So if that is a topic you do want to write, talk to your counselors, talk to your English teachers to kind of think of a more creative way, particularly if you are creative, in terms of sharing that story with us. But that is the one topic that we all get. The other one is service trips. Going on a service trip, doing community service in a community that is not your own, and learning about a new way of life. We certainly appreciate that you're able to kind of put yourself outside of your comfort zone and explore different ways of living. But that tends to be one that does not come off very popular on behalf of the student, particularly when you're writing about how other people live. You really want to focus, if you're going to do a community service outreach, you really want to focus that topic on you and what you learned and offer a little bit more reflection. But that is another topic that is often written about. And the last one is your role models. And so role models, we certainly know that everyone has a role model, but you really want to focus the essay on you. We appreciate mom and grandma, we appreciate uncle and grandpa and dad and neighbor and any other adult figure in your life. And you certainly want to provide some backstory, maybe like a few sentences, but the focus of the essay is supposed to be about you, your reflection, your growth. Why is this person important to you? What did you learn from this person? Why are you still connected with that person? Maybe if you are still connected. How is this person important to you? And the focus of the essay is about you. The last thing I want to say is that another topic that is not appropriate is romantic relationships. Unfortunately, I received some essays this year about like dating life. I don't need to know about your romantic relationships. That is not something that's really appropriate for a college essay. I know some students who think about like, well, can I use curse words, or can I be a little bit more edgy, or can I be super creative, or kind of going beyond the boundaries of like what a typical college essay is. If you're someone who's funny, be funny. But if you're someone who's not, don't be funny. And that's usually the joke that most of us often say, because we can tell naturally what is comfortable to the student, because it just comes out easily. They're able to write about it more comfortably, and it really aligns with their personality that we received from the rest of the components of the application. But we don't want you to be something that you're not. We want you to be truly authentically you. If you're someone who's like, I'm super creative, I want to write a 5-page poem, I want to write a screen play, I want to do like a video or something else, go for it. But if you're someone who's a little bit more structured and finds comfort in that, a 5-paragraph essay is not going to be the end of the world, and that's totally fine. But you want to make sure that the focus of the essay is about you and what your growth is, what your reflection is, and not anyone else.
And just kind of, to highlight what Jade was saying there too about like being edgy and things like that, you want to be true to yourself, but you want to be true to yourself in writing the essay. And it also, that kind of aligns usually with the places that you're applying to. If that's you and that's authentically you, that's going to line up with the schools that you're applying to. So you shouldn't have to worry about being your authentic self if you're applying to the right places for you, where you're ultimately going to be a fit and be happy. So all that kind of stuff lines up all the way along. What about kind of moving on? Demonstrated interest might be something that people have heard. Can someone explain what demonstrated interest is, and if you use it in the admission process, and what are some examples, maybe other than visiting campus, because that might be difficult for some? And in your opinion, like, how important is it to visit to a campus? Is that a must?
Am I the only school that looks at demonstrated interest?
Yeah, I think you might be. I'm not sure about Christy.
Yeah, we don't.
Okay. Okay, so demonstrated interest is your form of connection with the institution. It could be a visit to campus, it could be an email interaction, it could be a virtual panel, or maybe a virtual info session, a virtual tour that you've attended. It could be an interview, whether that may be virtual or in person. But demonstrated interest is your connection, your interaction with that institution. It seems like Lafayette is the only school that looks at demonstrated interest in this panel. And so we do look at that, and we do take that as a consideration and as a factor in the admissions decision, because we want to admit students that are actually interested in us versus ones that are like, oh, I'm just going to throw it on my list and see what happens. We are a small community, and so typically smaller schools look at demonstrated interest because they are crafting their community. Every student that they admit is going to produce waves, it's going to produce energy and volume on our campuses. So we want to make sure that we are getting students that are interested in us, are going to be engaged in our activities and our academics on campus, versus someone who's just going to come to Lafayette, go to classes, and then go home. So there are various forms of demonstrated interest. And what I would say is that, let's say you visited an institution and it's in your junior year. Well, maybe if you're still seriously interested in that institution, and if they track demonstrated interest, then maybe you should go visit them again, maybe after you applied, or possibly when you've been admitted, just to gain a different understanding of that institution. Because one visit to that school can tell you a lot, but it's not going to tell you everything. Because whether it's the weather or who you interact with, it could be a lot of different factors that may be impacting your experience. But the more touch bases you have with the institution, particularly the smaller ones, the more you're able to understand like who they are and what kind of students vibe there. For schools that track demonstrate interest, and we know that we send you a bunch of emails. We know you get a lot of publications from us. One thing I would recommend is that, particularly for students who are just starting out the college process, create a generic college email and let that be the email that you're sending everything to. Because the one thing is that, particularly with high school emails, there are filters on the high school side that prevents our communications from going through to you folks. And those communications provide important information. Whether we have an open house, if you're interested in engineering, we may have an information session coming up or an engineering tour. There's a lot of information that we do put in those emails. We're not just sending them to you just because we want to send them to you. But I would create an alternative email that's like Joe Schmo going to college. And that way all the schools will be able to send it to you. And I would open them. You don't have to read all of them, but open all your emails, because schools that do look at demonstrate interests will see if you've opened those emails. Not to be creepy, we don't look and we don't particularly care how many times you've opened an email, but we can tell when you've opened the email, where it is, what device, how many times, what time of day. It's really creepy. Lafayette does not look at that at all, but we do look to see, like, have you attended a college? Have you attended a high school visit when I go to Hillsborough? Have you interviewed with us? Have you connected with us in any form of way? That is something that we look at, because again, the amount of interest that you have for us, it reflects in the way that you interact with us. Hopefully I didn't creep anyone out.
No, I think that's a really good explanation. And, you know, it's important to know some schools do track demonstrated interest. I would definitely say that skews to more smaller institutions that maybe have a smaller applicant pool and are looking for a more intentional entering class. I would say that kind of goes that way. And other schools don't. Like, Alyssa, do you care if a student visits? I mean, does it factor into admission?
No.
No.
So
that being said, why do I come visit when I'm down the road from Hillsborough to New Brunswick? What's the point?
Right. Well, I think even if a school doesn't, if you are interested in possibly applying to a school, even if they do not track demonstrated interest, you should absolutely, if you can, go take a visit to the campus when the students are there. I think that is a really, really great way for you to just kind of stand there and see if you can see yourself there. And this goes back to finding the best fit for you, not the best fit for your parents, or, you know, the best fit for everybody else at school that's applying to this, you know, this school. The best fit for you. And so I think going to the campus, if you can do it while students are still in session, maybe it has to be over the summer, but also maybe you can do it multiple times depending on, you know, where you're going, to walk around, just kind of feel it out and see if you could see yourself there for 4 years, because why would you want to go somewhere? You know, this goes back to the, you know, what you're going to be applying into and just trying to hack the system and get in. And, you know, why would you want to do something if it's not really going to feel authentic to you? And you will be more successful if you're somewhere that you feel good about. And if you're doing something that you feel good about and you're enjoying, you will be way more successful than if you go somewhere or do something that you think is right, you think you should like to do, but maybe you really just don't like to do it or really don't want to be there. So finding a good fit for you is really important. And a good way to do that is by going to the campus. And even if you don't take an official tour, you know, some campuses are open, like NYU is a little bit more, it's in the city, so you can kind of just go and stroll around the area. The same thing with Rutgers. So take an official tour, maybe just pop by the area and do some people watching, but it's a really, really great way to see if that's a good fit for you.
And that unofficial tour option is pretty common for our students from Hillsborough. I mean, everybody knows somebody that goes to Rutgers. We're right down the road. That being said, I think students would be really surprised if they went over to Rutgers and stood on College Ave in the campus mall and looked around and looked at how many students they could actually pick out that were students that they know. I think some students have this misconception that I'm going to look around and I'm going to see all the same faces that I saw in the 200s wing of Hillsborough. And just to put in perspective, you know, at any given time, we probably have 300 to 400 Hillsborough students at Rutgers, and there are, you know, over 30,000 students on campus. So you don't see as many faces as you think you're going to. So we're, you know, coming up to our last hour and a half too. Go ahead, Donna.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to say too, kind of what Alyssa was talking about as far as, you know, really getting as much information. Information is power, to really help you have that feeling in your bones if it's a good fit for you. So keep in mind the schools that are offering campus visits, open houses, those are great chances to really learn more about programs in the community that's offered. Many times the schools, like at Drexel, we have a full admissions program and events that we offer, but also a member of our colleges and schools, they'll do summer institute programs, or they'll have their own information sessions so that admissions really doesn't work with them on. So there can be a number of ways for you to find information about the community, about the academics, about the programs. And then our student ambassadors are a great resource too. So those are current students at Drexel that give our tours. So they also will answer emails for students too. And that's really who I think the students want to talk to. Current students, to see what their impressions are of a college or program. So there can be a number of ways to really find information that you're looking for and get valuable insights, whether it be from staff or students themselves. So, you know, if you do have any questions, again, reach out to any admissions counselors and they're going to be able to direct you to how you can get that information.
Great. And since we're, you know, rounding up to the hour and a half, and I promised you guys we'd stop around that point too. I think maybe just a good, you know, last question is, you know, maybe your one or two kind of like best tips for, you know, a successful college search and application process. If you can take into account some things that are maybe sitting in the unanswered Q&As, you know, that's helpful. If you can't, that's fine too. I'll try to get what I can.
I think that if you really use the college search process as a period of self-reflection and really think about what it is that you're interested in, even if you're not sure of it yet, like general areas of interest, and, you know, really think about your college search as categories you want to fulfill rather than like name schools that you want to go to. I think if you really do that and reflect and do it right, then you're going to end up at a place that's right for you. I think also it's important to remember that there's really not just one right place. You'll end up at a place that's right for you. Notice I didn't say the place that's right for you. I went to a small liberal arts college and I applied early decision to that school. I applied to literally one school. I had all my other applications ready to go. And when I got in, I was like, all right, I'm done. And so I know that's like unheard of now, but I was really happy there. I met my husband. It worked out great. But years and years later, my niece, who also went to a small liberal arts college, she graduated a few years ago, when we were kind of like just, you know, looking at colleges with her and stuff, just because it's like an interest of ours. She was looking at so many other institutions that I was like, oh, I would have been happy here too. Oh, probably would have been happy here too. Look at that place. I probably would have also been happy. And so I think it's important to not get caught up in like the one dream school, and remember that there's probably a lot of places where you would be really happy. Even if, you know, it's not necessarily your first choice. That same niece applied to several schools. Her very first choice school, she languished on the wait list. I tell this story all the time. She just was waitlisted, never got off the wait list, and just very reluctantly enrolled at her second choice school. Flash forward, she was the senior class president. She studied abroad. She made, you know, so many lifelong friends and just had an amazing experience at somewhere that wasn't her first choice, because she did the college search right, and it, you know, worked out the way it was supposed to, and it will for all of you as well.
I will also add that that was a really great answer, Christy. My answer is a little bit just more logistical, of just be organized and give yourself enough time, you know, starting to make those lists of not just names, but like what, in order to get that list of names, like what's your non-negotiable? You have to go to a school where you can be on the swim team, because maybe you're not going to go to a school that has a Division I swim team. Maybe you really, really want to swim, but you know what I mean? Just making your list of like some of your non-negotiables, and starting early, being organized, because there are so many different universities in not only New Jersey, but in the United States. And all of them are kind of asking for the same thing, but different things and different methods of sending those things and different dates you need to get those things in by. So the college application process is probably going to be stressful no matter what. So making sure that you give yourself some time to start early, start those essays early, be organized in where you're going to apply and when you need to send those places, what materials, can kind of alleviate a little bit of that stress, at least from a time management perspective.
I think in addition to not just the application itself, but also, I think so many of us, we hear this, the dream school, that school's on a pedestal. I would say don't put any school on a pedestal. The best school for you, your dream school, fits you academically, socially, with community that you're going to want or need, and financially. So those are the three areas I think everybody really, that could be the top three that you look for. And then also just, you have to be realistic about the finances and what the schools are going to be able to offer you, because that really can be a big part of the decision that you're making. So your parents don't want you graduating with a mortgage on your shoulders, and you don't want that either. And you don't have to come out of school in that situation. So I would just say try and be as realistic as possible about the finances, keeping in mind then those other components too, the academics and the social engagement.
I think what I would say, and it definitely is easier to say than to do, is control what you can control, right? It's way easier to say than to do. But I think that's true for both parents and students, in slightly different ways. Students, right? I think there's oftentimes a lot of focus on what's happening in admission review rooms that you're not in, when there's a lot that you can focus on how you're presenting yourself and how you're thinking about the things that you get to do in this process, right? Where you apply, and when the ball is back in your court, where you go and how you show up there, right? There's a lot that you get to do with that. So control what you can control. I think for parents, that means that if you're thinking about who you want your student to be when they get to college and when they're in college, right? How can you start that in the admission experience, right? So if you want them to, in college, be a really, great independent decision maker, what can we do now? How can we give up some control to them and be a partner instead of a manager to facilitate that, right? So for everyone in this process, I know it's harder to do than to say, but one more try at a time, controlling what you can control.
And to make it a little bit lighthearted as well, my piece of advice is don't be like me. I was applying to colleges in the fall of 2012. It's actually kind of funny that my internet is playing games tonight, because the story that I always tell is I was applying to my early decision and early action schools around the time that Hurricane Sandy hit, and I lost power and internet for a week right before November 1st. So I submitted my college applications mildly sobbing in the corner of a Panera Bread, because that was the only place where I could get power and internet to get those applications submitted. So I know I'm not the first to say it, be organized, be ahead of your deadlines. November 1st deadline or November 15th deadline doesn't mean that you submit the night before at 11:50 p.m. It means that you get it in as soon as you are comfortable doing so. It's going to save yourself a lot of headache and stress down the line. So there you go.
What's funny is Chris tells that story about how he was working on that application. And back then I was a regular school counselor at my prior school. And I vividly remember probably being just down the road from Chris in my living room, frantically typing students' letters of recommendation and hoping to get them in before my power went out. On what was going to be November 1st. Now, the deadlines were ultimately extended at a lot of schools, but we feel the stress from the other side of the desk too. And we're all trying to get everybody's applications in on time. That's why we all should be looking ahead. All right, I think we are done for the evening. So thank you so much to everybody who stuck with us. Thank you so much to all of our presenters. This is my favorite program, and you guys did a wonderful job. So thank you so much for helping out our Hillsborough students. Have a great night, everyone.